In the mountains about 30 miles from Madrid, the capital city of Spain, stood a new man-made mountain of marble and stone known as the Escorial, a combination of palace, church, monastery, and mausoleum. Alone, bent over a heavy carved desk in a gloomy room of this mammoth palace, far removed from the world and its people, sat a slight, narrow-shouldered, sickly pale, gray-haired man dressed entirely in black. An important document lay before him, which with thin fingers he shoved slowly and deliberately aside. Taking his quill, he dipped it, scraped it neatly on the edge of the inkwell, and began methodically checking a column of figures as to the number of flagstones required to finish the monastery courtyard, or some other minor calculations that would turn his thoughts from the disturbing document. The thin man in black was the King of Spain, the royal builder of the Escorial. Philip II was not only the richest, most powerful monarch in Europe, he was also the most painstaking and industrious. Day after day, hour after hour, he sat bent over his heavy carved desk like a busy spider, spinning out long, detailed instructions to gardeners, architects, and shipbuilders, and forming a web of intrigue with his endless letters and dispatches to spies and ambassadors. Each matter, great or small, he considered patiently, secure in the belief that as God's representative on earth, he could do no wrong. Therefore, trusting no one, he laid careful plans to have his royal enemies assassinated as quietly as possible, heretics tortured, stubborn unbelievers wiped out, until he had turned all Europe back into one state and one church, that of his own. Then Europe would again be a united Christendom, as it had been for 1,000 years, until the year 1519, when his father Charles V had been made Holy Roman Emperor by the Germans. That year something had occurred that he, Philip II, could only regard as a disastrous event, one that had shattered the unity and peace of Christendom. At the first meeting that Charles V had held as emperor, a German monk had been brought before him for trial. This insubordinate monk, named Martin Luther, had dared to defy the Pope's authority, protesting that the Church of Rome needed to be reformed and to return to the simple teachings of the Bible. This protesting idea, this reading of the Bible, it had spread like a plague throughout northern Europe. Soon another Protestant reformer arose with much more extreme ideas, a Frenchman by the name of John Calvin, who had been driven out of France but developed his stern doctrine in Geneva, Switzerland. The teachings of both Luther and Calvin had spread into the lowlands along the North Sea, known as the Netherlands. This land was the birthplace of Philip's father, Charles V, a land of old and rich and beautiful cities which the emperor dearly loved. Philip himself, unlike his father, hated the Netherlands. It was so different from Spain, where he had been brought up. He also hated the people. They were stubborn and disobedient, determined to think for themselves. In Spain, torture had successfully purged the land of Protestants, as it had formerly of Jews and Muslims. But try as he might, Philip could not clear them out of the Netherlands or bring the independent creatures to their knees. With Holland in the lead, the traitors had put their rebellious thoughts into writing. The disturbing document lying on his desk was their declaration of independence. He turned to it again. His thin hand, marked with heavy blue veins, drew the rattling sheet of parchment towards him, and he reread the first sentence. whereas God did not create the people as slaves to their prince to obey his commands, whether right or wrong. Philip stopped. How could ignorant common people expect to judge a prince, whether his commands were right or wrong? A prince was created by God to rule, and they were created to obey without question, both in religion and in government. The two went hand in hand. If people tried to think for themselves in one thing, they would try to do so in another. Here in these words was the proof, furnished by these traitors in the Netherlands. And France and England were helping them. That made Philip's work more difficult. But since it was God's work, it could not fail. In time, he would gain control over both France and England, and in his own way, not by declaring war as his advisers kept urging him to do. A recent letter from his ambassador in England led Philip to believe that the plot to assassinate Elizabeth would soon succeed and bring the desired result. Shoving the troublesome document from the Netherlands aside, he reread this encouraging letter. "Such is the condition of England," wrote the ambassador. "Signs of revolt everywhere, the Queen in alarm, the Catholic party numerous, Ireland disturbed, and distrust aroused by your Majesty's fleet, that if so much as a cat moved, the whole fabric would crumble down in 3 days beyond repair, in which case you could lay down the law for the whole world." Lay down the law for the whole world. At those last words, something like a smile passed over Philip's sad, sallow face. Lay down the law for the whole world. That was the ambition, the dream of Philip II, the happiness he hoped for. About the only immediate happiness this king found was in his children, especially his favorite Isabella, who was 14 and often helped her father with his letters. He had sent for the children. The door behind him soon opened, and there they were, 3 of them. Isabella, a lovely-looking girl, her younger sister, and their small half-brother Philip. All ran to their father with open arms and returned his greeting with affection. The 2 girls were the children of Philip's third wife, the French Princess Elizabeth, whose brother was now King of France. The small boy's mother was an Austrian princess who had died earlier in that year, 1581, leaving Philip a widower for the 4th time. The 54-year-old monarch looked more like the grandfather of the little 2-year-old boy, not yet out of skirts. He came running as fast as he could on his short legs, holding out to his dear papa a beautiful ripe peach.